After winning a $500 million lottery, his wife didn't celebrate with him. Instead, she changed the locks, filed for divorce, and had security escort him off the property like he was a stranger. Standing on the sidewalk with a single suitcase, Marcus Hale didn't argue. He didn't beg. He didn't even react when she called him dead weight. Because what Lydia didn't know, what no one in that house knew, was that the ticket she claimed as hers had never legally belonged to her, and Marcus had already made a quiet move that would take everything back. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. 3 days earlier, everything still looked like a normal marriage. Marcus Hale moved quietly through the kitchen of their suburban Philadelphia home, placing his wallet beside the coffee machine like he always did. The house was large, recently renovated, and filled with the kind of furniture that looked better in photos than it felt to live with. Most of it had been Lydia's doing. Lydia Vance stood at the marble island, scrolling through her phone, barely glancing at him. Her reflection in the glass cabinets showed a woman who had learned how to perform success. Designer blazer, perfect posture, a certain impatience in the way she tapped her fingers. "You're leaving already?" she asked without looking up. "Work starts early," Marcus said. His tone was even. "Calm, always calm, you know," Lydia added finally, lifting her eyes. "Most people your age are doing more than just balancing spreadsheets." Marcus gave a small nod. He had heard versions of that line before. From her friends, from her parents. He didn't argue. That had become a pattern in their marriage. Marcus worked as a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm. Stable, predictable, invisible. Lydia, on the other hand, had spent the last 3 years building a name in luxury real estate. Her clients drove cars Marcus would never buy. Her social circle had shifted, and with it, so had her patience. She didn't hate Marcus. Not exactly. She had simply outgrown the version of him she thought she married. At least, that's what she told herself. Marcus reached for his jacket, but his phone buzzed before he could leave. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He hesitated, then stepped slightly away from the kitchen. "Marcus Hale," he answered quietly. A voice came through, professional and measured. "Mr. Hale, this is Daniel Reeves from Cross & Adler Legal. I wanted to confirm. Have you finalized the registration structure we discussed?" Marcus lowered his voice further. "Yes, everything's in place." "Under the LLC?" "Yes." A brief pause. "Then, good. That gives you protection. If anything happens, ownership remains tied to the entity, not possession." Marcus's eyes flicked toward Lydia. She was still scrolling, uninterested. "That was the point," he said. "Then you're covered," the lawyer replied. "Just make sure all documentation stays consistent." "It will," Marcus said, and ended the call. When he turned back, Lydia was watching him now. "Who was that?" she asked. "Work," Marcus replied. She studied him for a moment, like she didn't quite believe it, but didn't care enough to push. "Don't be late tonight," she said. "I have a client dinner. I might need you to help set things up before I leave." Marcus nodded. That was another pattern. He stayed. He adjusted. He made things easier for her, not because he had to. Because, for a long time, he had chosen to. Later that evening, Marcus stopped at a small corner store on his way home. It wasn't much to look at, fluorescent lights. A narrow aisle, a tired cashier who recognized him with a nod. "Same numbers?" the man asked. "Same numbers," Marcus said. He entered them without hesitation. Dates that had once meant something. Anniversaries. Birthdays. Markers of a life that now felt distant, even though he was still living inside it. The ticket printed with a soft whir. Marcus took it, along with the receipt, and slipped both into his wallet with deliberate care. Not casual, never casual. Back home, Lydia was already dressed for her dinner. He could smell her perfume before he saw her. Finally, she said, "I thought you got lost in one of your spreadsheets." Marcus set his keys down. Traffic. She walked past him, heels clicking sharply against the floor. "I don't have time for dinner tonight. I'll eat out." He nodded again. No questions. No friction. Lydia paused at the door, glancing back. "You know, Marcus," she said, "one day you're going to wake up and realize you've wasted your life playing small." Marcus met her gaze. For a second, something almost shifted in his expression. But it passed. Maybe, he said simply. She left without another word. The house fell quiet. Marcus stood there for a long moment, then walked to the kitchen drawer and placed the lottery ticket inside. Same spot, same routine. But before he closed it, he took out his phone, opened a secure folder, and scanned the receipt, saved, timestamped, filed under a name that didn't match his own. He closed the drawer gently. Upstairs, Lydia's closet door remained slightly open, revealing rows of clothes that didn't belong to the life they once shared. Marcus leaned against the counter, staring at nothing in particular. He could leave. He had thought about it more than once. But leaving without understanding what Lydia had become and what she was willing to do never felt like closure. So he stayed, and he watched. His phone buzzed again. A message this time. From the same unknown number. Documents verified. Entity ownership confirmed. You're protected. Marcus read it once, then locked his phone. Somewhere in the house, Lydia's laughter echoed faintly from a voice message she had left playing before she walked out. Bright, carefree, distant. Marcus picked up his wallet, checking once more that the receipt was exactly where it should be. Then he turned off the kitchen lights. 3 days later, the numbers would be drawn, and nothing in that house would belong to the person who thought she had already won. The morning Lydia called him replaceable was the same morning she wore a $6,000 blazer to a breakfast meeting she hadn't invited him to. Marcus noticed the detail the moment she walked past him, not because he cared about the brand, but because he recognized the pattern. The purchases were getting more aggressive, more intentional, less hidden. "You're still here?" Lydia asked, setting her designer bag on the counter like it belonged in a showroom. "I work from home today," Marcus replied, closing his laptop halfway. "Quarter-end reports." She gave a soft laugh. Not amused, dismissive. "Right, numbers. That's your thing." Marcus didn't respond. He rarely did anymore. It wasn't silence out of weakness. It was control. He had learned that engaging only gave her more ground to stand on. Lydia poured herself coffee without offering him any. "I have a showing at 10. Then lunch with Ethan. He's flying in from New York." Marcus nodded once. He had heard that name more often in the past 2 months than he had in the entire rest of their marriage. Ethan Cole, real estate developer, fast money, flashy reputation. The kind of man Lydia now surrounded herself with. "He's closing a deal downtown," Lydia added, watching Marcus carefully. "Big one, hundreds of millions." Marcus leaned back slightly in his chair. "Sounds complicated." "It's not complicated when you know how to play the game," she said. "That's the difference." There it was again. Not just comparison. Replacement. Marcus looked at her, really looked this time. The confidence, the impatience, the quiet contempt. "You think I don't understand how those deals work?" he asked calmly. Lydia blinked, almost surprised he spoke. Then she smiled. "Marcus, you balance expense sheets. Ethan builds cities." Marcus let the words settle. He could have corrected her. He could have explained the tax structures behind those deals, the shell entities, the silent investors who never appeared on paper but controlled everything. But he didn't, because that wasn't the conversation she was capable of having. "Enjoy your lunch," he said instead. Lydia shook her head lightly, grabbing her phone. "You know what your problem is? You're comfortable being small." She walked out before he could answer. The house felt different after she left. Not empty, just clearer. Marcus reopened his laptop, but he wasn't looking at accounting spreadsheets anymore. A secure folder blinked open on his screen. Files labeled with timestamps. Receipts, transaction logs, digital backups stored in layers Lydia didn't even know existed. He clicked through them with practiced ease. Everything matched, every purchase, every record, every date. He closed the folder. For now, it stayed buried. Later that afternoon, Marcus stopped by the office. Not because he needed to, but because routine mattered. It kept things believable, consistent. His manager, Carl Jennings, waved him over. "Hey, Marcus? Got a minute?" Marcus stepped into his office. "What's up?" Carl leaned back in his chair. "We've got a client asking about asset structuring for a large windfall. Hypothetical situation, but they want options." Marcus's expression didn't change. "Personal or corporate?" "That's the thing," Carl said. "They're debating whether to claim it individually or through an entity." Marcus folded his hands loosely. "Entity gives you insulation, limits exposure. Keeps ownership clean if there's a dispute. Carl raised an eyebrow. You sound like you've done this before. Marcus gave a faint smile. It's not complicated if you understand how ownership is defined. Carl nodded slowly. You ever think about moving into advisory? You're wasted here. Marcus didn't answer right away. I'm exactly where I need to be, he said. Carl laughed. Man, you're either the most patient guy I've ever met, or you're sitting on something you're not telling anyone. Marcus met his gaze, calm as ever. Maybe both. Carl shook his head, amused, and moved on to the next topic, but the moment lingered. On the drive home, Marcus's phone buzzed again. A message this time, from Daniel Reeves. Reminder, all entity filings finalized. No changes should be made without legal review. Keep physical documentation secure. Marcus read it once, then locked his phone. When he stepped into the house that evening, Lydia wasn't alone. Ethan Cole stood in the living room, leaning casually against the wall, like he already owned the place. Tall, confident. The kind of man who took up space without asking permission. Marcus, Lydia said, her tone suddenly brighter. You're home. Ethan pushed off the wall and extended a hand. Heard a lot about you. Marcus shook it. Firm. Controlled. Likewise, Marcus said. Ethan smiled, but there was something behind it. Calculation, assessment. We were just talking about expansion opportunities, Ethan said. Lydia has a good eye for property. Marcus nodded. She always has. Lydia glanced between them, clearly enjoying the contrast. Ethan thinks I should scale faster, she said. Leverage bigger deals. Marcus looked at Ethan. That usually comes with bigger risks. Ethan shrugged. Only if you don't know how to manage them. Marcus held his gaze a second longer than necessary. Or if you don't know who's actually backing the deal. A flicker of something crossed Ethan's face. Gone just as quickly. Lydia rolled her eyes. This is what I mean. Always cautious, always thinking small. Marcus stepped past them, setting his keys down. Caution isn't small, it's expensive to ignore. Ethan chuckled lightly. You sound like a lawyer. Accountant, Lydia corrected quickly, almost dismissively. Marcus didn't bother fixing it. Dinner that night felt like a performance. Lydia laughed more than usual. Ethan told stories about deals, investors, numbers that sounded impressive but left out the parts that mattered. Marcus listened. He always listened. At one point, Lydia reached for Ethan's arm as she laughed. The gesture was subtle, intentional, not hidden. Marcus noticed, but he didn't react, because reacting would have meant she still had power over him. Later, after Ethan left, Lydia stood by the door for a moment longer than necessary, watching his car disappear down the street. When she turned back, Marcus was already in the kitchen. You didn't have to be so intense, she said. I wasn't, Marcus replied. She crossed her arms. You make things uncomfortable. Marcus looked at her, steady. No, he said quietly, you just don't like being reminded that not everything is as simple as it looks, Lydia scoffed. Everything is simple when you have the right resources. Marcus nodded slowly. That depends on who actually owns them. She didn't understand the sentence. She didn't even try to. I have an early morning, she said, dismissing the conversation. Don't stay up too late. She walked upstairs without waiting for a reply. Marcus stood there for a long moment, then reached into the drawer. The lottery ticket was still there. Exactly where he had left it. He checked the receipt again. Then, without hesitation, he removed both and placed them into a slim, unmarked envelope. He walked to his study, opened a locked drawer, and slid the envelope inside. The key turned with a soft click. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Daniel Reeves. Next step ready whenever you are. Timing matters. Marcus stared at the screen, then typed a single reply. Not yet. He set the phone down. Upstairs, Lydia's laughter echoed faintly through the house as she spoke on the phone again. Soft, intimate, not meant for him. Marcus turned off the lights in the study. 3 days. That's all it would take, and somewhere between those 3 days, someone was going to make a move that couldn't be undone. Saturday morning came with a quiet that felt almost deliberate. Marcus woke earlier than usual, not because he needed to, but because routine had trained him that way. For 12 years, Saturdays had meant one thing: coffee, laptop, numbers. He moved through the kitchen without turning on the overhead lights, letting the pale morning spill in through the windows instead. The house was still. Lydia hadn't come home until after midnight. He had heard her heels, the soft laugh that didn't belong to him, the door closing with just enough care to pretend nothing had changed. Marcus didn't go upstairs. He didn't need confirmation. The laptop screen flickered to life as he sat down. He opened the lottery site automatically, fingers moving faster than thought. The results were already posted. $500 million, one winner. Pennsylvania. His eyes narrowed slightly as he clicked through the numbers. He didn't rush, didn't jump, didn't react the way most people would. He checked once, then again. Then a third time slower, every number matched. Marcus leaned back in his chair, letting the reality settle in without letting it take control. The room stayed quiet, no celebration, no shock. Just a measured breath. 12 years of consistency, and now, finally, it had landed. His gaze shifted toward the kitchen drawer. For a brief second, something close to satisfaction crossed his face. Not excitement, not greed. Validation. He stood, walked over, and opened the drawer with the same calm precision he used for everything else. Measuring spoons, old takeout menus, spare batteries, no ticket. Marcus didn't move right away. He simply looked at the empty space where it should have been. Then he closed the drawer, slowly. Think, he murmured under his breath. Not panic. Process. He checked his wallet next. Empty. That wasn't unusual. He had all read the envelope in his study. Marcus turned immediately and walked down the hallway. His steps were steady, but something had shifted beneath the surface now. Not fear, alertness. He unlocked the study drawer and pulled it open. The envelope was gone. This time, the silence felt heavier. Marcus stood there, staring at the empty drawer. He didn't curse, didn't slam anything, but his jaw tightened just enough to show something had broken through. Someone had taken it, and there was only one person who knew exactly where to look. He stepped back, running through the sequence in his mind. Last night, the timing. Lydia coming home late, the way she had lingered near the study earlier that week, the subtle questions she had asked without asking. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened the secure folder again. The receipt was still there. Time-stamped, backed up, verified. He checked the bank transaction next. Confirmed. Purchase. Rivera's Corner Store. Thursday. 6:42 p.m. Everything he needed still existed, just not in that drawer anymore. Footsteps sounded upstairs. Marcus locked his phone and slipped it back into his pocket just as Lydia descended the stairs. She looked different. Not rushed, not distracted. Focused. "You're up early," she said casually, walking into the kitchen like nothing had changed. "So are you," Marcus replied. She poured herself coffee again, the same way she always did. But there was something new in the way her fingers moved. A subtle tension, or maybe excitement. "Did you check the numbers?" Marcus asked, watching her carefully. Lydia paused for half a second. Then she smiled. "Oh, that thing," she said lightly. "I forgot about it." Marcus leaned against the counter. "You usually remind me." She shrugged. "I've had more important things on my mind." He nodded slowly. "Make sense." She turned away, sipping her coffee. "Did we win anything?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He studied her face instead, the calm, the control, the way she avoided looking at him directly. She said it too easily, Marcus thought. "Not that I saw," he replied finally. Lydia let out a small, dismissive laugh. "Of course not. We never do. We." The word hung in the air, hollow. Marcus pushed off the counter. "I'm going out for a bit." "Where?" she asked. "Too quickly, Aarons," he said. She nodded, but her grip on the coffee cup tightened just slightly. "Don't take too long," she added. "I might need you later." Marcus almost smiled. Need. That word meant something very different now. "I won't," he said, heading toward the door. Outside, the air felt sharper, cleaner. Marcus walked to his car and sat inside without starting the engine. For a moment, he let himself feel it, not the loss, the shift, because this wasn't confusion anymore. It was confirmation. Lydia hadn't stumbled onto the ticket. She had taken it, on purpose. Marcus exhaled slowly, then pulled out his phone again. He opened a new message, Daniel Reeves. His thumb hovered over the screen for a second. Then he typed, "Ticket removed from secured location. Proceeding with contingency." He hit send. The response came faster than expected. "Understood. Do not confront. Maintain position. We'll handle the rest when timing aligns." Marcus stared at the message. Timing. Everything came down to timing. He started the car. Back inside the house, Lydia stood at the kitchen window, watching him drive away. Her phone was in her hand now, unlocked, a message thread open. Marcus didn't see it, but if he had, he would have recognized the name at the top. Ethan. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. "It's confirmed," she typed. "I have it." 3 dots appeared almost instantly, then a reply. "Good, don't wait. You know what to do next." Lydia smiled. Not the polite, controlled smile she gave Marcus. Something sharper. More certain. She locked her phone and set it down. Then, without hesitation, she walked toward the study. The drawer was still open from earlier, empty. She looked at it for a moment, then closed it with quiet satisfaction. Upstairs, her closet door swung open. Outfits shifted, heels replaced, decisions made. By the time Marcus returned, nothing in that house would feel the same again. And somewhere between the missing ticket and the message he had just sent, the first real move of the game had already been made. Marcus didn't go home right away. Instead, he parked 2 blocks away and sat in the car with the engine off, watching nothing in particular. The street was quiet, ordinary, the kind of place where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. But something already had. He checked his phone again. No new messages from Daniel. That was expected. Silence meant the process was moving exactly as it should. Marcus leaned back slightly, letting the weight of what he now knew settle in fully. Lydia hadn't just taken the ticket. She had moved fast. Too fast for someone acting on impulse. Which meant this wasn't just betrayal. It was preparation. He finally stepped out of the car and walked the rest of the way home. The front door opened easily. No confrontation waiting. No raised voices, just quiet. But it wasn't the same quiet as before. It was sharper, intentional. Marcus stepped inside and immediately noticed the difference. The air smelled faintly different, new perfume, not Lydia's usual one. The living room was cleaner than usual. Too clean. Surfaces cleared. Objects repositioned. Someone had been preparing for something. He walked toward the kitchen. Lydia stood at the counter again, but this time her phone wasn't in her hand. It was face down, deliberate. "You're back," she said, her tone light-controlled. Marcus set his keys down, yeah. She watched him for a moment longer than necessary. "You were gone a while. Had things to take care of." She nodded slowly. "Good, that was it. No questions. No curiosity," which told him everything. Marcus moved past her, opening the fridge without really looking inside. His attention was on her reflection in the stainless steel. She wasn't relaxed. She was waiting. "Did you ever check the numbers again?" she asked casually. Marcus closed the fridge. "I told you," he said. "Didn't see anything." Lydia tilted her head slightly, studying him. Strange, she murmured. Marcus turned toward her. "You don't usually believe in that people change," she replied. He held her gaze. "Yeah," he said quietly. "They do." The silence stretched just a second too long. Then Lydia smiled. "Actually," she said, picking up her phone again, "something interesting did come up today." Marcus didn't react. "Work?" he asked. She said. She stepped around him, heading toward the living room. "I might have a big opportunity, bigger than anything I've done before." Marcus followed at a distance. "What kind of opportunity?" Lydia turned to face him fully now, and for the first time, there was something close to excitement in her eyes. "Life-changing," she said. Marcus studied her expression. She was enjoying this, enjoying knowing something he didn't, or thought he didn't. "That's good," he said. "You've been wanting that." "I have," she replied, "and I'm finally done waiting for it to happen." The words weren't just about work. Marcus heard that clearly. "And Ethan?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral. Lydia didn't hesitate. "He's helping me structure things," she said. "He understands scale, risk. How to move quickly when the window opens." Marcus nodded slowly. "Speed matters," she agreed, "and mistakes happen and faster when people rush." That landed, not hard, enough, but elephant. Lydia's smile tightened just slightly. "I'm not you, Marcus," she said. "I don't sit around analyzing until the opportunity disappears." Marcus didn't respond right away. He walked to the window, looking out at the street for a moment before speaking again. "Just make sure you know what you actually have before you act on it," he said. Lydia laughed softly. "Trust me, I do." Marcus turned back. "Do you?" he asked. There it was again, that small shift, that moment where something almost surfaced. But Lydia brushed past it. I have a meeting Monday morning, she said, already moving on downtown. Private, legal team, financial advisors. The whole thing. Marcus's attention sharpened slightly. All ready? He asked. She shrugged. Like I said. I don't wait. He nodded once. Right. Lydia picked up her bag. I'm heading out again tonight. Dinner. Don't stay up. Marcus watched her move toward the door. Lydia, he said. She paused, turning back just enough. Yes? Marcus held her gaze. You should be careful who you trust right now. The words were simple, but the weight behind them wasn't. Lydia frowned slightly. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Marcus said evenly, big opportunities attract people who don't always have your best interests in mind. For a second, she just stared at him. Then she smiled again. Confident. Certain. I think I'll take my chances, she said, and then she was gone. The door closed. Marcus stood there for a long moment before moving. He didn't follow, didn't check where she went. Instead, he walked straight to the study, opened the drawer, still empty. But that wasn't the point anymore. He sat down at his desk and pulled out a second key from his pocket. Smaller, less obvious. He unlocked the bottom compartment of the filing cabinet. Inside were copies, not just the receipt, not just the transaction, but a full chain. Documents Lydia didn't even know existed. Marcus flipped through them once, carefully. Then stopped on a single page, LLC registration. His name wasn't there directly, but the structure was clear. Ownership wasn't personal. It was controlled, protected. He placed the document back exactly where it had been, then reached for his phone. He didn't text Daniel this time, he called. The line picked up on the second ring. Yes? Daniel's voice was calm. She's moving faster than expected, Marcus said. How fast? Meeting Monday. Legal team involved. A pause. That's earlier than we anticipated, Daniel replied, but it doesn't change your position. Marcus leaned back in his chair. No, he said. It just means she's about to make it worse for herself. Daniel didn't respond immediately. Then, do you want to stop her? Marcus's eyes shifted toward the closed study door, toward the empty house, toward everything that had already been broken. No, he said finally. Another pause. Then we let it play out, Daniel said. Marcus nodded, even though Daniel couldn't see him. We let it play out. He ended the call and set the phone down. Outside, the streetlights flickered on one by one. Inside, the house felt quieter than it ever had before. Marcus sat there, completely still, not waiting, not reacting, just watching pieces fall into place. Upstairs, Lydia's closet door remained open. And inside her bag, hidden beneath layers of fabric and leather, the lottery ticket rested, untouched, unverified, and already tied to something she didn't understand. Monday was coming. And by the time she walked into that meeting, she wouldn't just be claiming a fortune. She would be walking straight into a legal structure she had no control over. Monday morning didn't come with chaos. It came with precision. Marcus woke at the same time as always, moved through the same quiet routine, and dressed the same way he always did. Pressed shirt, neutral colors, nothing that drew attention. From the outside, nothing had changed. But the house felt different. Not because of what had been said, because of what hadn't. Lydia was already awake when he stepped into the kitchen, not rushing, not distracted, ready. She stood in front of the mirror near the hallway, adjusting her blazer with slow, deliberate movements. Navy. Tailored. Expensive enough to signal importance without looking desperate. Her phone buzzed once on the counter. She didn't look at it. Marcus poured himself coffee. You're leaving early, he said. Lydia glanced at him through the mirror. I told you. Big meeting, Marcus nodded. With the legal team? That caught her attention. She turned fully now. I didn't say legal. You said advisors, Marcus replied. That usually him for a second, then smiled. Controlled again. You're paying more attention lately. Marcus took a sip of coffee. I always did. Lydia didn't respond to that. Instead, she picked up her bag, and for a brief moment, Marcus's eyes followed the movement. There. The weight, subtle, but there. The ticket was inside, unverified, unsecured, and already moving into a system it didn't belong to. You're not coming with me, Lydia said, more statement than question. Marcus shook his head. No. Good, she replied. This is complicated. Marcus almost smiled. I'm sure it is. Lydia stepped toward the door, then paused just long enough to add, You wouldn't understand how these things work. Marcus set his cup down. You might be surprised, but she was already gone. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Marcus didn't move for a few seconds. Then he reached for his phone. No message. Not yet. He checked the time. 8:12 a.m. Her meeting would start within the hour. Marcus walked into the study and sat down at his desk. He didn't open the drawer this time. Didn't need to. Instead, he pulled out a different folder. Inside were copies of everything Lydia didn't know existed. Purchase confirmation, timestamped records, entity documentation, and something else, a signed authorization form. Marcus glanced at it once, then closed the folder again. Not yet. His phone buzzed. This time it wasn't Daniel, it was an unknown number. Marcus answered without hesitation. Yes, Mr. Hale? The voice was professional, controlled. This is Melissa Grant with Caldwell and Pierce. Marcus leaned back slightly. I know who you are. A brief pause on the other end. Then you understand why I'm calling. I do. Another pause. We've been contacted this morning regarding a claim involving a high-value lottery ticket, Melissa continued. Your name surfaced during our preliminary review. Marcus didn't react. That's expected. Her tone shifted, just slightly. Are you available to discuss your involvement? Marcus glanced at the clock again. 8 perfect timing. I am, he said. But I assume you're already in a meeting. A longer pause this time. Yes, she admitted. We are. Marcus's expression didn't change. And she's there, he said. It wasn't a question. Melissa didn't answer directly, but she didn't deny it either. She has presented documentation claiming ownership, Melissa said carefully. Marcus closed his eyes for a brief second, then opened them again. And you're verifying, correct? Marcus stood up slowly, walking toward the window. You'll find a discrepancy, he said. Silence. What kind of discrepancy? Melissa asked. The kind that matters, Marcus replied. Timestamp. Purchase location. Entity structure. He let the words settle. On the other end, papers shifted. Someone whispering. The energy of a room beginning to change. We'll need formal documentation, Melissa said. Her voice sharper now. You'll get it, Marcus replied, but not from her. Another pause. Mr. Hale, she said carefully. If what you're implying is accurate, this could significantly affect the claim process. Marcus looked out at the street. It will. Inside that meeting room, Lydia was probably sitting across from attorneys, confident, composed, believing she was steps away from securing everything, believing possession was enough, believing speed had given her control. She's already moving forward, Melissa added. If there's something we need to know, there is, Marcus said, cutting in gently. But timing matters. Silence again. Then tell me this, Melissa said. Is she authorized to claim that ticket? Marcus didn't answer right away. He let the question sit, let the weight of it reach across the distance. Then he said quietly, no. On the other end, everything shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but enough. Marcus could hear it in the silence. The recalibration, the doubt. Understood, Melissa said finally. We'll pause further processing until this is clarified. Marcus nodded once, even though she couldn't see him. That would be wise. Expect a formal request for documentation, she added. You'll have it. The call ended. Marcus stood there for a moment longer, then exhaled slowly. Across the city, in a polished conference room filled with advisors and legal experts, Lydia sat with her bag placed neatly beside her chair, confident, prepared, certain she had already won. She didn't know the call had just happened, didn't know the process had already slowed, didn't know the system she had stepped into was no longer moving in her favor. Marcus returned to his desk and picked up the folder again. This time, he opened it, flipped to the authorization sheet. His signature sat there, clean and deliberate. Control wasn't about reacting. It was about choosing when to act. And now, for the first time since the numbers were drawn, Marcus allowed himself to consider the next step. He reached for his phone again, scrolled to Daniel's name, then paused, because once he sent this message, there would be no going back. No quiet observation, no waiting, just action. Marcus typed a single line, proceed with challenge. His thumb hovered over the screen, then pressed send. Miles away, inside that conference room, Lydia's phone lit up on the table, a notification she hadn't been expecting. And as one of the attorneys leaned forward, frowning slightly at the documents in front of him, the first real crack in her perfect plan began to form. The conference room was too quiet. Lydia noticed it the moment she finished speaking. Moments ago, she had been confident, clear, in control. She had laid everything out the way Ethan had coached her: timeline, possession, intent. She had even smiled when she placed the ticket on the table, as if that alone closed the case. But now the energy had shifted, not dramatically, subtly, the kind of shift people didn't announce but reacted to. Across from her, two attorneys exchanged a glance. Not confusion, not disbelief, concern. "Is there something unclear?" Lydia asked, her voice steady. Melissa Grant didn't answer right away. She flipped through the documents again, slower this time. "Just verifying a few details," she said. Lydia leaned back slightly, crossing her legs. "Everything should be straightforward. I have the ticket. I've already explained the purchase." Another pause. Then Melissa looked up. "You stated you purchased this ticket Thursday evening." "Yes." "At which location?" 7th Avenue Market, Lydia replied immediately. "Too quickly." Melissa nodded once, jotting something down. "And the time? After work?" "Around 6:30. That was when the first crack widened. One of the junior associates leaned toward Melissa and whispered something. Lydia couldn't hear it clearly, but she caught a word. "Timestamp." Her fingers tightened slightly on the armrest. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Melissa looked at her again, this time more directly. "We're confirming purchase records," she said. "Standard procedure for claims of this size." Lydia smiled, of course. But something's inside her had already shifted. Not fear, not yet, but awareness. Because this wasn't going the way she had expected. Her phone buzzed lightly on the table. She ignored it, then it buzzed again. This time, one of the attorneys glanced down at it. "Ms. Vance," he said carefully, "you may want to check that." Lydia frowned, picking up her phone. The notification was brief, unknown number. Claim processing temporarily paused, pending ownership verification. For a second, Lydia didn't understand what she was reading. Then she looked up. "What does this mean?" she asked. The room didn't respond immediately, which was answer enough. Melissa closed the file in front of her. "It means," she said slowly, "that there is a conflicting claim." Lydia's expression hardened. "That's not possible." "It is," Melissa replied. "No," Lydia said, sharper now. "I have the ticket." "That establishes possession," Melissa said calmly. "Not necessarily ownership." The words hit harder than Lydia expected. Ownership, the one detail she hadn't taken seriously, because Ethan had told her she didn't need to. "Who filed the claim?" Lydia demanded. Melissa didn't answer directly, but her eyes said enough. Lydia's mind moved quickly. "Marcus." No, that didn't make sense. He hadn't even reacted when she tested him. He didn't know. He couldn't know, unless her stomach tightened. "What exactly is being questioned?" she asked, trying to regain control. "The origin of the ticket," Melissa said. "Purchase verification. Entity association." Entity. That word landed differently. Lydia straightened slightly. "It was a personal purchase." Melissa didn't respond. Instead, she slid a document across the table. "Then you should be able to explain this." Lydia looked down. It was a partial record. Not complete, but enough. A timestamp. A transaction. Different location. Different time. Her breath slowed, controlled. "This isn't mine," she said. Melissa watched her closely. "Are you sure?" Lydia pushed the document back slightly. "Yes." Another silence. Longer this time. "Then we'll need additional verification," Melissa said. "Until then, the claim process remains paused." Lydia's composure held, barely. "I want a copy of everything," she said. "You'll receive it," Melissa replied. The meeting ended without ceremony. No congratulations, no next steps. Just controlled exits and quiet conversations that didn't include her. Lydia gathered her things quickly, slipping the ticket back into her bag. For the first time since she had taken it, her grip tightened around it. Outside, the air felt colder, sharper. She didn't call Marcus. She didn't need to. She called Ethan. He answered on the second ring. "Well?" he asked. "There's a problem," Lydia said. A pause. "What kind of problem?" They paused the claim, she said. "There's another verification issue." Another pause, longer. "What issue?" "They mentioned ownership," Lydia said. "Purchase records. Something about an entity." Silence. Then Ethan exhaled slowly. "Okay," he said. "Don't panic." "I'm not panicking," Lydia snapped. "Good," he replied calmly, "because this doesn't change anything." Lydia leaned against her car, gripping the phone tighter. "It changes something," she said. "They wouldn't stop the process for nothing." "They're just covering themselves," Ethan said. Large claims always trigger review. Lydia hesitated. That sounded reasonable. But something about the way the room had shifted. No. She shook the thought away. "What do we do?" she asked. "We move fast," Ethan said. "Get ahead of it." "How?" "Lawyer up properly," he replied. "Not just advisory. We need someone aggressive." Lydia nodded slowly. "I already have a team." "Then push them," Ethan said. "Don't let this stall. If there's a competing narrative, we shut it down early." Lydia looked back at the building. "They asked about purchase details," she said. "Stick to the story," Ethan replied immediately. Lydia went quiet. Story, not truth. That distinction mattered more now than it had before. "You're sure this is solid?" she asked. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." But something in his tone had changed. Just slightly. Enough for Lydia to notice. "Marcus couldn't have done this," she said, more to herself than to him. "Who?" Ethan asked. "My husband," Lydia said. "He doesn't know anything about this." Another pause. Then Ethan spoke, slower now. "Don't underestimate people just because they look small." Lydia frowned. "You haven't met him," she said. "He's not. Just be careful," Ethan cut in. "That's all I'm saying." The call ended shortly after. Lydia stood there for a long moment, staring at her reflection in the car window. For the first time since she had taken the ticket, doubt crept in. Small, but real. Back across the city, Marcus sat in his study, reviewing a new set of documents that had just arrived digitally. Preliminary acknowledgement of claim dispute. Formal request for verification. And something else. A notice. Emergency filing window opens in 48 hours. Marcus read it once, then, again, timing. Everything still came down to timing. He reached for his phone, scrolled past Daniel, past everything else, and stopped on a contact Lydia had never seen before. Adrian Cross. He didn't call, not yet, but his finger hovered over the name, because once he did, this would no longer be controlled escalation. It would become a direct confrontation. Marcus leaned back slowly, then locked the phone. 48 hours. And on the other side of that window, only one version of the truth would survive. By the time Lydia got home, the house no longer felt like hers. It looked the same. Nothing had been moved. No signs of confrontation. No accusations waiting for her. But something had shifted beneath the surface. Marcus was in the kitchen, exactly where she expected him to be. Calm, quiet, predictable. It irritated her more than it should have. "You're home," he said, without looking up. Lydia set her bag down harder than necessary. Meeting ran long. Marcus nodded once. I figured. She watched him for a second, searching for something. A reaction. A question. Nothing. "You didn't ask how it went," she said. Marcus finally looked at her. "Did it go the way you expected?" The question landed clean, too clean. Lydia crossed her arms. There were complications. Marcus leaned slightly against the counter. There usually are. That tone again. Calm. Measured. Like he wasn't surprised. Lydia narrowed her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Marcus said evenly, "big decisions tend to involve more than one version of the truth." For a brief second, something flickered in her expression. Recognition. Then she pushed it away. "You wouldn't understand," she said. Marcus didn't respond, because that line didn't matter anymore. Lydia grabbed her phone, scrolling quickly. Messages from Ethan stacked on top of each other. "Did they say anything specific?" Ethan had written. "Do they know? Call me." She ignored the messages for now. Instead, she turned back to Marcus. "They're verifying details," she said. "Standard process." Marcus nodded, of course. Lydia studied him again. "Did anyone contact you?" she asked suddenly. Marcus met her gaze. "No," he said. The lie came easy lying. Not because he was used to lying, because the truth wasn't something she had earned anymore. Lydia exhaled slowly, her shoulders easing just slightly. "Good," she said. That one word told Marcus everything. She was afraid. Not of losing the money, of losing control. "I'm meeting Eth tonight," she added, almost casually. Marcus nodded. "I assumed." Lydia's lips pressed together. "You don't seem surprised by anything anymore." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. "I stopped expecting honesty," he said. The words didn't hit like an accusation. They landed like a conclusion. Lydia's expression hardened. "You're being dramatic." Marcus didn't argue, because there was nothing left to defend. She grabbed her bag again, turning toward the door. "I won't be late," she said. Marcus didn't respond. The door closed behind her, and just like that, the house felt empty again. But this time, Marcus didn't stay still. He moved straight to the study. He didn't hesitate anymore. No pauses. No second guessing. The file came out. The documents laid flat across the desk. He flipped through them quickly, stopping at the sections that mattered. Purchase verification. Transaction logs. Entity registration. Then the formal draft. Prepared. Not filed. Not yet. Marcus picked up his phone and scrolled to Adrian Cross again. This time he didn't hesitate. He called. The line rang once. Twice. Then, Marcus Hale, the voice on the other end said, calm and direct. I was wondering when you'd call. Marcus leaned back slightly. You already know why. I know enough, Adrian replied. Lottery dispute. High value. Time sensitive. Marcus nodded. It's moving faster than expected. That's what happens when someone tries to claim something they don't fully understand, Adrian said. Marcus's gaze shifted toward the documents. She's already in motion. And you're not, Adrian replied. Not a question. A statement. Marcus exhaled slowly. Not yet. There was a brief pause. Then Adrian spoke again. That window you're waiting for, it's closing. Marcus knew that. 48 hours. Now less. I don't need the full window, Marcus said. I just need it to land right. Adrian let out a quiet breath. Then we file now. Marcus didn't answer immediately because the filing wasn't just a legal move. It was a line once crossed, there was no stepping back into silence. No, Marcus said finally, not yet. Another pause. You're giving her room to make it worse, Adrian said. I know. Why? Marcus looked down at the table, at the documents, at the structure she didn't understand. Because she already has, he said quietly. Adrian didn't argue, didn't push. He understood. Then you're not trying to stop her, Adrian said. No, you're letting it build. Yes, all right, Adrian said finally. But when you move, we move completely. No partial claim. No negotiation. Marcus' jaw tightened slightly. Full recovery, Adrian continued. Every dollar, every asset tied to it. Marcus nodded. That's the plan. The call ended. Marcus sat there for a moment, staring at the phone. Then he set it down. Across the city, Lydia sat across from Ethan in a dimly lit restaurant, the tension between them sharper than before. This isn't normal, she said quietly. They paused everything. Ethan leaned back, his expression controlled. They're stalling, he said, testing your confidence. Lydia shook her head. No, they mentioned another claim. Ethan didn't respond right away, and that silence said more than his words ever could. You didn't tell me there could be another claim, Lydia said. There shouldn't be, Ethan replied. Then why is there? Ethan leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. Because someone's trying to scare you. Lydia studied him. Who? Ethan held her gaze. Someone who thinks they have a right to something they don't. Marcus. The name didn't need to be said. Lydia looked down at her bag, at the ticket. For the first time, it didn't feel like certainty. It felt like risk. What if they're right? She asked quietly. Ethan's expression sharpened immediately. They're not. You don't know that. I do, he said, firmer now, because possession is everything. Lydia nodded slowly, but the doubt didn't disappear. It just shifted, deepened. Back at the house, Marcus turned off the lights in the study. The documents were back in place. The plan was still intact. But now something had changed. He wasn't just waiting anymore. He was choosing the moment. And somewhere between Lydia's doubt and Ethan's pressure, the next move was already forming. Marcus picked up his phone one last time that night. Not to call Adrian, not to call Daniel, but to check a single update, the claim status. Still paused, but now marked with something new. Pending formal dispute submission. Marcus stared at the screen for a second, then locked it, because the system was no longer neutral. It was waiting for someone to take control. And Marcus had just decided he would. Tomorrow, the silence would end. Tuesday morning didn't feel like a continuation. It felt like pressure building under something that was about to crack. Marcus didn't rush. He moved through the day exactly the same way he always did. Work emails, short calls, routine tasks that grounded everything else in normalcy. Because normal made people careless, and careless made mistakes. Across the city, Lydia was already making hers. She stood in her new office space, temporary, borrowed from one of Ethan's contacts, reviewing documents she didn't fully understand. Legal language, structures, clauses. All of it felt heavier now, less like opportunity, more like something she had to defend. You need to stop hesitating, Ethan said, standing near the window, phone in hand. That's how you lose control. I'm not hesitating, Lydia replied, flipping another page. I'm making sure everything lines up. Ethan turned to face her. It doesn't need to line up perfectly, it needs to move forward. Lydia looked up. That's easy for you to say, she said. It's not your name on the claim. Ethan's expression didn't change, but something tightened behind his eyes. No, he said, but I'm the one making sure it actually goes through. That didn't reassure her. It never really had. Lydia closed the folder and set it down. They asked about purchase details again. Ethan nodded. Stick to the same answers. They're checking timestamps, she said. So let them, Ethan replied. You're already in possession. That's what matters. Lydia held his gaze. It didn't feel like that mattered yesterday, she said quietly. Ethan stepped closer. That's because they're testing you, or because something doesn't match. A pause. Short, but real. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then we control the narrative. Lydia looked away. Narrative. Story. The words were starting to feel too similar. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Yes. Ms. Vance, the voice said. Calm, professional. This is Adrian Cross. The name meant nothing to her, but something in his tone made her straighten. I'm calling regarding the disputed lottery claim, he continued. Lydia's pulse shifted slightly. Yes, she said. I'm already working with a legal team. I'm aware, Adrian replied. This won't take long. Lydia glanced at Ethan. He was watching her closely now. What is this about? She asked. Clarification, Adrian said, specifically regarding ownership leak. Lydia's grip tightened on the phone. I've already clarified that. Not entirely, Adrian replied, a beat. Then, the ticket in your possession is not legally yours to claim. The words landed clean, direct, no hesitation. Lydia felt something drop inside her chest. That's not true, she said immediately. It is, Adrian replied, and you'll be formally notified within hours. Ethan stepped closer, trying to hear. Who is this? Lydia demanded. Someone representing the party who holds legal ownership, Adrian said. The room felt smaller, tighter. There is no other party, Lydia said. There was a pause. Then Adrian spoke again. Miss Vance, I suggest you review how that ticket was purchased. The line went dead. Lydia stared at her phone. For a second, she didn't move. Then she looked up at Ethan. They're claiming it's not mine, she said. Ethan's expression darkened immediately. Who? Some lawyer, she said. Adrian Cross. That name registered, barely, but enough. Ethan's jaw tightened. Did he say who he represents? No. Ethan stepped back slightly, running a hand through his hair. That's not random, he muttered. What does that mean? Lydia asked. It means someone's pushing this, he said. Hard. Lydia felt the pressure build again. Marcus couldn't do this, she said, almost automatically. Ethan didn't respond right away. That silence stretched longer than it should have. Could he? Lydia asked. Ethan looked at her. Really looked this time. I don't know him, he said carefully. But I know one thing. What? People don't file claims like this unless they have something real. The words hit harder than anything Adrian had said. Because they weren't legal. They were logical. Lydia shook her head. He doesn't have anything. You sure? Ethan asked. She hesitated, and in that hesitation something shifted, because for the first time she realized she didn't actually know. Back at the house, Marcus sat at his desk, reviewing the final draft Adrian had sent over. It was clean, precise. Every claim backed by documentation, every statement anchored to evidence. No gaps, no assumptions, just facts. He read it once, then again, then signed. The digital confirmation blinked on the screen. Filed. There was no undoing that. Marcus leaned back slowly, exhaling. This wasn't reaction anymore. This was position. His phone buzzed almost immediately. Daniel. It's in motion, Marcus said before Daniel could speak. I know, Daniel replied. They just flagged the claim internally. Marcus, long before it escalates. Hours, Daniel said. Maybe less. Marcus's gaze shifted toward the window. Somewhere across the city, Lydia was still trying to hold on to something she didn't fully understand. She'll push back, Daniel added. I expect that, Marcus said, and when she does. Marcus didn't answer right away, because this wasn't about winning an argument, it was about ending a structure. Then we let her, he said finally. Daniel went quiet. You're certain? He asked. Marcus looked down and at the documents again. At the evidence, at the truth that had always been there. She already made her move, Marcus said. Now it's mine. The call ended. Marcus stood up, walking toward the door. Not to leave, just to feel the shift. The house was still. But it didn't feel like waiting anymore. It felt like something closing in. Across the city, Lydia's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call. It was a document. Stamped. She opened it slowly, and as her eyes moved across the first line, her breath caught. Formal dispute filed. Claimant identified. Marcus Hale. The name didn't just sit on the page, it hit her. Hard. And for the first time since she had taken the ticket, Lydia realized she wasn't ahead. She was already behind. The courtroom didn't feel dramatic, it felt controlled, cold. Every movement had weight, every word had consequence. Marcus sat at the far end of the table, calm, composed, his posture straight but relaxed. He wasn't dressed to impress. Just a dark suit, clean lines, nothing excessive. Across from him, Lydia looked different. Not broken. Not yet. But strained. Her confidence, the one she wore so easily just days ago, was thinner now. Like something stretched too far. Ethan sat beside her, quieter than usual. His usual sharp energy had dulled, replaced by something cautious, watching, calculating. The judge entered. The room settled instantly. "Let's begin," the judge said, scanning the files. Lydia's lawyer stood first. He was confident, experienced, used to control. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of possession and claim," he began. "My client, Miss." Lydia Vance presented the winning ticket, followed the required procedures, and was recognized as the valid claimant. Marcus didn't move, didn't react, but his lawyer did. Adrian Cross stood slowly, adjusting his sleeve before speaking. "Your Honor, the issue is not possession," he said. "It is ownership." The room shifted slightly, subtle, but real. Mr. Hale's claim is based on verifiable purchase records, financial documentation, and a structured entity through which the ticket was acquired. Lydia frowned slightly. Structured entity. She didn't like how that sounded. Her lawyer responded quickly. "Even if purchase is disputed, possession and submission remain valid under standard claim procedures. Not when the ticket was purchased under a registered entity," Adrian cut in calmly. "And not when the funds used for that purchase are fully traceable." He turned slightly, placing a document before the judge. Exhibit A, bank transaction records. Marcus watched Lydia's face. He didn't look at the judge. He looked at her. Because this was the moment where belief started to crack. Lydia leaned forward slightly as her lawyer reviewed the document. "What is that?" she whispered. Her lawyer didn't answer immediately, and that silence said more than anything else. Adrian continued. "The ticket in question was purchased using an account registered under Hale Financial Holdings, LLC. The sole authorized signatory on that account," he paused, "not for effect, for precision, is Mr. Marcus Hale." The words didn't explode. They settled. Heavy. Permanent. Lydia blinked. "That's not possible," she said under her breath. Ethan didn't speak, but his eyes moved quickly between the documents, processing, adjusting, recalculating. Marcus remained still. Not triumphant. Not emotional. Just present. Because this wasn't a reveal to him. It was a confirmation. Her lawyer recovered quickly. "Your Honor, even if the purchase originated from this account, the ticket was physically in my client's possession. Possession obtained without authorization," Adrian replied. He placed another document forward. Exhibit B. Security footage from the convenience store. Lydia's breath caught. Her eyes moved instantly. "That's not," she started. But the footage was already playing, silent, clear. A timestamp. Marcus at the counter, payment processed, receipt printed. The clerk handing him the ticket. No ambiguity, no confusion. Just fact. Then a second clip, short, almost insignificant, but devastating. Lydia, later that evening, at the same counter, speaking to the same clerk, requesting a duplicate receipt. Her lawyer froze. Ethan leaned back slowly. And for the first time, something in his expression shifted from control to distance. Lydia shook her head. "That doesn't prove anything," she said quickly. "I had the ticket, because you took it," Adrian said, not raising his voice. No anger, no accusation, just clarity. Lydia's lawyer stepped forward again. "Your Honor, we object to the interpretation." "You can object to interpretation," the judge said calmly, "but not to evidence." Silence settled. He reviewed the documents again, carefully, then looked up. Ms. Vance, he said, were you aware that the ticket was purchased under an LLC? Lydia hesitated. That hesitation stretched, because any answer now carried weight. No, she said finally. And were you authorized to claim assets purchased under that entity? Another pause, longer, no. The judge nodded once, not harsh, not sympathetic, just final. Marcus didn't move, but inside something shifted, not satisfaction, not victory, just release, because the truth was no longer his to carry alone. It was visible now, public, real. Lydia's lawyer tried one last time. Your Honor, regardless of initial purchase, the funds have already been partially distributed. Reversal would be complicated, the judge finished. Yes, he leaned back slightly, but not impossible. The room held still. This court recognizes Mr. Hale as the legal owner of the ticket and its associated winnings, based on the evidence presented. Lydia's face drained. The claim made by Ms. Vance is therefore invalid. The words landed harder than anything before, because this time there was no argument left, no interpretation, just consequence. Ethan stood up slowly, not dramatically, just done. I need to take a call, he muttered, already stepping away. Lydia turned toward him. Ethan, but he didn't stop, didn't look back. That was the moment everything around her started collapsing at once. Not loud, not explosive, just quiet and irreversible. Marcus remained seated, still composed, still calm. Adrian leaned slightly toward him. We're not finished, he said quietly. Marcus nodded once. I know, because winning ownership was only part of it. What came next would define everything else. Across the room, Lydia sat frozen, staring at the documents that had just dismantled everything she thought she had secured. And for the first time, she understood something simple. She had never actually known the man she married, not even close. Marcus stood up slowly, not to celebrate, not to confront, just to leave. Because this wasn't about standing over someone who had already fallen. It was about deciding what to do next. As he reached the door, his phone buzzed. A message, short, direct, from Adrian. Final recovery options ready. Your decision. Marcus paused for half a second, then stepped out of the courtroom and closed the door behind him. The silence after the ruling didn't end when Marcus walked out of the courtroom. It followed Lydia home, followed her into the empty living room that had once felt like a victory. The furniture was still there, the expensive fixtures, the glass surfaces, the carefully staged designs she had shown off online. But it no longer felt like hers, because legally it wasn't. The accounts had been frozen within hours, the transfers flagged. The purchases traced back to funds that no longer belonged to her. Lawyers had begun the process of recovery, not aggressively, not vindictively, but thoroughly. Ethan never came back. He sent one message, short, detached. Something about complications and needing distance. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an explanation. Just an exit. Lydia read it twice, then put her phone down. There was nothing left to argue with. Across the city, Marcus stood on the balcony of a quiet, understated apartment. Not luxurious, not temporary, just intentional. Adrian had offered options, settlements, strategic pressure, ways to take more than what had been taken from him. Marcus had declined most of them. He didn't need to destroy her. He only needed the truth to stand. The funds were returned, the accounts restructured under his LLC. The legal ownership clarified and documented in a way no one could challenge again. Everything clean, everything quiet, and for the first time in a long while, everything entirely his. He didn't celebrate, he didn't post, he didn't call anyone to tell the story. Because the story wasn't about the money. It never had been. A week later, Lydia saw him again. Not in court, not in conflict, just by chance. He was sitting at a cafe, alone, reviewing something on his tablet. Calm, focused, the same way he had always been. She hesitated before walking over, not out of confidence, but because leaving would have meant accepting the distance completely. Marcus, she said. He looked up. No anger, no bitterness, just recognition. Lydia. She sat down without asking. The silence between them stretched for a moment. I didn't know, she said finally. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't emotional, just honest. I know, he replied. That answer landed heavier than anything else. Because it wasn't an accusation, it was a fact. She looked at him, really looked this time. Not at his clothes, not at what he appeared to be. At him. You could have told me, she said, though her voice lacked certainty. Marcus shook his head slightly. Would it have changed anything? She opened her mouth, then stopped because she knew the answer. No, it wouldn't have. She had already decided who he was long before the money entered the picture. You thought I was nothing, he said quietly. I thought you weren't enough, she admitted. There was no defensiveness left, no pride to protect. And now? He asked. She exhaled slowly. Now, I think I never understood what enough actually meant. The words hung there, not as redemption, just realization. Marcus nodded once. That's something you figure out for yourself, he said. She looked down at her hands. Empty. I lost everything, she said. Marcus didn't respond immediately. Then calmly, you lost what wasn't yours. Another silence. But this one felt different. Not sharp, not heavy. Just finished. She looked up again. Do you hate me? He thought about it. Not long. Just honestly. No, he said, and it was true. Not because what she did didn't matter, but because holding on to it no longer served him. That was the difference. That was the line she had never seen. I don't want anything from you, he added. Not an apology. Not an explanation. She nodded slowly, because for the first time she understood that she no longer had anything he needed, not emotionally, not financially, not at all. Marcus stood up, picking up his tablet. There was no dramatic exit, no final statement. Just a quiet end to something that had already broken long before the lottery numbers were drawn. As he walked away, Lydia remained seated, watching. Not the man she thought she had lost, but the one she had never actually known. Weeks later, Marcus moved forward. Investments. Quiet expansions. Decisions made carefully, without noise. His name still didn't appear anywhere public. The LLC remained the shield, the structure, the truth he controlled. But this time it wasn't about hiding. It was about choosing. Choosing what mattered. Choosing who had access. Choosing a life that didn't require him to prove anything to anyone. The money stayed. But more importantly, so did his sense of self. And that was something Lydia had never seen, never valued, until it was too late. If you've ever been underestimated or judged for what you seem to be, share your thoughts below. Would you have made the same choice Marcus did?